Well, welcome to this step 2, protect yourself. Every month of the year, we will be going through 12 steps of the book, Something in the Water, 12 Steps to End Fluoridation in Your Town. And we are here together, worldwide fluoride-free activists and advocates and campaigners, here to support one another, to inspire one another, to share information with each other, to share tricks and tools and strategies so that we can all benefit from our collective experience. And you can use this time every month to invite your team to come so that you have that one day a month that you're all together and you're all learning along together, so that by the end of the year, your whole team will be level set on all the things that's needed to make for a strong campaign. So welcome and thanks for being here, everyone. You're the ones that are going to make the difference. I'm going to invite you all to spread the word. It's becoming more and more challenging. Fluoridation as a topic is definitely something that gets shadow banned. I'm talking about everything from social media, as you're familiar with, but even email nowadays. I can say with great certainty, fluoridation as a topic is definitely something that the big tech world has determined needs to be banned, filtered, shadow banned, canceled. You know, they can only do so much without being obvious about it. But my experience, my collective experience over many years organizing international fluoride-free advocates, both on social media and through the email, has shown me that there are extra hurdles that we need to get through in order to communicate with one another. So, you know, it's not great news, but it's part of the reality of fighting fluoridation in this time. And so you'll have to go that extra yard to make sure that people are getting your emails, make sure that people are seeing your social media posts, and that we all, if as much as we can, share each other's posts and forward the emails that you get. That's something that we can all do to help increase our overall effectiveness. It's relevant to all of us all the time. Social media is part of the deal today. So again, thanks everyone for being here. Our topic for today is going to be how to protect yourself. And then we'll definitely spend some time on that topic to get it really solid for us and understand what's so important about that in a successful campaign to fight fluoridation. And then we'll open up the conversation to hear about your campaigns. And then we can use the time to support one another, listening to where you are with your objectives, your assets, and your behaviors. If you remember from last month, we talked about how to strategize together and be clear about what your objectives are and the assets that you're accumulating toward that objective and the behaviors that you have on your team that are getting you toward your objective. So let's go ahead and start with protecting yourself. Okay, so obviously there's a motivation, there's a reason to reduce your exposure to fluoridation chemicals. It's just because it's healthful. You won't, be exposed to this horrible neurotoxin, enzyme toxin, thyroid toxin, this overall body toxin. You won't be exposing yourself to it. So every day that you can do that for yourself is a win for you and your family. That's obvious advice that anyone who wants to end fluoridation needs to hear if they don't already know it, if they're not already filtering their water, if they're not already asking at the cafe or restaurant, do you filter your water, to find out what is your exposure. Likewise, showering and all the other things. But really the focus of the chapter in the book, Something in the Water, 12 Steps to Ending Fluoridation, when it comes to protecting yourself, it's not only protecting you and your family, but it's also a huge advantage that you have when you go to campaign. Whether you're lobbying your elected officials or whether you're out in the community meeting your neighbors at a farmer's market, for example, people will ask you, well, what do I do to reduce my exposure to fluoride? And when they ask that question, you're doing well, because I think that in the general scheme of things, people don't think too much about their water unless there's some sort of crisis like we had in Flint, Michigan, or something that brings it to the news. Most people don't think about their water. They don't want to think about their water. As I think many of you have noticed, when you bring up just the idea that maybe the water they're drinking isn't the best in the world, people get really depressed or defensive or upset because they don't want to have to deal with one more thing. Can't the water at least be okay? So if we get to the point where they're actually asking you, okay, so what can I do to help reduce my exposure to fluoride? Then you know that they are already in favor of looking at the truth, willing to look at the reality, even though fluoride is odorless and tasteless and invisible, it is there. And so they're taking you on your word for it, that it's in there and that it's not good for you. So if they've already accepted those facts from you, you know you're doing well. But then they're going to expect naturally that you know a thing or two about how to avoid fluoride in their lives, how to reduce the exposure to fluoride. They're going to expect that you know a thing or two about it, and they're going to start to ask questions. So it's a wonderful conversation when you get to that point. You know you're doing well, and you want to continue to establish yourself as an expert and to develop the credibility with this person by offering them some solutions. So when it comes to water filtration and water treatment, it's a very extensive topic, and I don't expect anyone to be like the absolute full-on expert. At the same time, if there is one person in your campaign, however, that is selected, like maybe somebody's really into water treatment, and they're or chemistry, or just in general, that's something that they already love researching. Maybe you can have one person on your team that's like the go-to person for all of the more subtle questions, the more rare questions. But in terms of the general questions that you're going to get from 95% of people, you should be able to offer them solutions. You should be able to give them at least a variety of options, and then support them in making the decision what's best for them. Sometimes I tell about my personal story, how I solved my problem, to me, how I've been able to succeed, and also the limitations. When I go to a restaurant, for example, I can't be sure what kind of water they use. I definitely don't drink the tap water that they bring me at the table. Customarily, I don't drink that water. And in fact, that's actually, whenever I'm out to dinner with friends, the first thing, and I don't know if it's true in your city, but it's very customary in San Francisco for people to bring water to everyone automatically. And when they're taking the drink order, I say nothing usually, because I don't drink soda pop and I don't drink too much alcohol. And so I'm like, usually, well, nothing. And they're like, so well, how about water? And I say, no, not even that. But you'd be surprised, 95 to 99% of the time, they bring me the water anyway. Anyway, it becomes an opportunity for a point of conversation. I can tell you that. But my point is that when you're first meeting people for whom this topic is relatively new, maybe they've heard of fluoride, maybe they know it's something about the teeth, it's in the water, but they don't know too much about it, and you tell them it's not good for them, they need some help right then and there in making some decisions about how to protect themselves. And then if they do follow up with you, in the sense that if they start to take some of your advice, or to choose to filter their water by a reverse osmosis device and put it under their sink, for example, then that person really gets it. It's no longer conceptual for them. It's not this micro dose of this invisible, odorless chemical. It is for them something that they're putting their money and time behind. That means they really get it, and they really are serious about limiting their fluoride exposure. And then the next natural step is for them to help the community reduce their overall exposure to fluoride by stop adding it to the water source. So that's the topic for today. And I want to hear from you all, maybe how you solve your problem. I live in an apartment, one-bedroom apartment in San Francisco, which is a kind of typical living situation here. So my situation is very good for a lot of people when I tell them that for years I would carry gallon bottles of a brand called Crystal Geyser up my 3 flights to my kitchen, and I hated that there was all this plastic that I was wasting, until eventually I researched and purchased a reverse osmosis. And there are pros and cons to reverse osmosis too, but it is really the best solution for ready fluoride-free water in my kitchen. My shower, on the other hand, is a different story. Anyway, so I'd like to hear from you all about how you personally reduce your exposure to fluoridation chemicals in your life, as an example for all of us to learn from. And then we'll also want to start sharing some resources. So if you could put it in the chat this week, and in this very month, I'll also be asking folks to add documents or various resources that you have for people to reduce their exposure to fluoride in the Telegram channel. So we announced it last month, and again, I'll let you know that we have a Telegram channel for folks to use and connecting with each other in between. Go on there and start adding different resources that you find. I'll combine them and I'll put them on our website so that everyone can have those various resources. For example, I was researching the Berkey filters recently, this last week, because it always comes up. It seems like that brand has gotten very successful in getting the word out. And so, I have their data sheet on the effectiveness of their filter to remove fluoridation. So let's get started sharing what we personally do for ourselves and our family, and then share also what it's like for you to help others. What resources you have, that you have yourself already from doing the research over the many years that maybe you've been looking at this, and how you help others, how you try to give people, whether it's advice or just help them sort it out for themselves based on their unique situation. Who wants to get started? Go ahead and open up your mic and let's get to it. Go ahead, Colin. What do you do at home?
I actually was sent a free filter from Clearly Filtered. Comes from California, and I use that at my home. It's a bit expensive to transport to Australia or pay the freight, but for my family, my 94-year-old mother, I also get a reverse osmosis filtered water from a vending machine. And there's actually 5 of those companies here in the jurisdiction I live in, southeast Queensland. So that's a couple of ways.
Tell me more about the filter that you get from California. What's it called again?
Clearly Filtered is the name of the company. They have both an under sink, I think it's mainly ionic exchange, plus the carbon filters.
Okay, ion exchange coupled with carbon filter.
Yeah, there's 3 little cartridges under the sink. There's no wastage of water, apparently. You mentioned Berkey before. I did see one review where they found it did filter out the fluoride, but it may add a bit more aluminium to the water because of their one of their ingredients.
Okay. So then when you're out campaigning, have you noticed that people do ask for your advice about what should I do? What do I need to do? For example, they might say.
Yes, well, I think I direct them, well, I give them a bit of advice, but I direct them to people like Fluoride Action Network, have a page, 10 ways to avoid fluoride exposure from Macola. Our own website, Fluoride for Australia, has one page on avoiding fluoride and different filtering mechanisms and ways, RO, distillation, etc., etc.
Very good. Yes, in the book, Something in the Water, 12 Steps to Ending Fluoridation in Your Town, we go through a cursory evaluation of those very options you're naming. And it's a great resource to have just to level set yourself and the basics, the fundamentals, and the pros and cons of the different options. All right, thanks, Colin. Who else? Does anyone have a whole house filter to remove fluoride? That's something the grandest I've heard, the most expensive, the most elaborate. So everything from all your water, your shower, your bathtub, your sink, your dishwasher, your washing machine, they all get fluoride-free water. Your house plants, everybody gets fluoride-free water when your whole house is filtered. Anyone got one of those by chance? Okay. What about when you go out to a restaurant or, what do you do there? Richard, do you take your fluoride meter with you and test your Vietnamese pho soup?
Well, I've done it before. I don't anymore because I know which restaurants, are okay. Because we have a mix down here. I went into one where it was in a fluoridated city, but I asked to check their water, and because they said I was going to have out of town visitors and they can't be exposed to fluoride, and they let me test the water in the restaurant, and it was not fluoridated because they took the pipe from a neighboring city that's not fluoridated, even though they pay their water bill to the city that is fluoridated. So down here we have all kinds of complex connections. But yeah, as far as getting fluoride-free water, I've been ever since LA started fluoridating our water in 2007. I've been hauling water from a well in Carlsbad that's naturally zero fluoride. It has no uranium, no arsenic, nothing in it. It's just calcium, magnesium. Those are the only elements in there besides water. So I haul it in 3-gallon jugs. I get about 6 of those every month for cooking and for drinking. But when they started, also I bought a water distiller for $90. So you can distill your own water from the city water. But I found out when you take a couple gallons and distill it down, if you take the lid off and put your head over the thing and look in there, the stench is unbelievable from the residue from city water. It's just amazing what the junk that's in city water. But those work well, but I just would rather haul the water that's naturally clean. And then I started checking with my fluoride meter all the sources of bottled water that are sold that are supposed to be free of fluoride, but many of them have fluoride in there. One of the worst is Arrowhead, because on their website they post that their average fluoride level is only like 0.2 or 3, something like that. But I checked it with the meter and mine was 1.2. So I called them and they said, well, yeah, that's the website only advertises one of the sources of our water.
Mm-hmm.
We get water from all kinds of different places besides Lake Arrowhead now, and some of it is just city water that's filtered and put out as though it's clean water. So I just skip Arrowhead, but other water, most of the other bottled water that's sold in stores is usually RO water, city water that's been RO'd properly. So there's pretty much no fluoride in it. But you're right, the best is the RO units, like the GE Profile. They sell that at Home Depot, Home Depot. And then another good unit is sold at Costco. And those I've tested with the meter and they work perfectly. But the only reason they work, they're not like the old RO system. The old RO system couldn't take out fluoride because fluoride, the ion is shaped like a little ball and it has the same diameter as a water molecule. So you can't just filter it out easily. But the modern RO units, the people here in Vista developed these membranes that are so tiny that the fluoride ion can't get through the pore, but it's squeezed under pressure sufficiently so that the water, which is more of an oblong shape, it's squeezed through sideways. So they achieve separation. So these modern RO units use those now, and they work really well. But the Berkey filter, the trouble with the Berkey filter is they use aluminum to try to capture the fluoride, and it only works for a little while. The numbers look great for a while, but I tried to do it here with the aluminum oxide filters, and Southern California can't use it because we have alkaline water. And so the hydroxide from the alkaline water sticks to the aluminum better than the fluoride does. So those filters are degraded in just a matter of a few weeks, and then they don't work anymore. So besides, I was worried about aluminum fluoride possibly leaking into the drinking water, and that's worse on your brain than just plain fluoride. So Berkey filters, aluminum filters, are supposed to be outlawed in California. And I'm not sure the whole reason why, but I don't mind it being outlawed just because of that, because it's not the way to remove fluoride. But that's how I've handled it. And people at work, they have me bring fluoride-free water to them because they want it. So I get that out of a machine in the city that's a good RO unit. The funny thing is that there was a guy who was maintaining the machines who I was speaking with one day when I was getting the water there, and he got mad at me for not fighting against fluoride more. Like it's my fault that they had to set up these modern RO membranes to get the fluoride out, because it was my fault I'm not getting the fluoride out, through legislation and stuff.
Right.
Like, so I didn't get offended by that because I know how hard I've worked against it, but that's kind of weird.
It's funny. Somebody else, please end water fluoridation for me.
Yeah.
So much information there that's very, very valuable. And it's captured in this recording, which will be made available in the International Fluoride-Free Teleconference Library this coming week, along with all the other recordings for these monthly gatherings. It's sort of like with this, you just gave us so much information, but as you can see that, maybe like 80 or 85% of situations can be handled by RO or a certain number of solutions. But as soon as you start talking about the alkalinity of the water, the different pipes from different utilities that you don't know, where the restaurant's getting its water, even though it might be in a supposedly non-fluoridated area, or vice versa. When you're talking about the side effects of aluminum or other kind of filtration, people in the book, we do talk about reverse osmosis, for example, making the water acidic and removing all of the minerals, which is a trade-off. There's just a lot to know, and I don't want people to be overwhelmed, but and I invite you to just continuously keep learning. Do you know what I mean? Oh, you know what you know already, which is probably more than the average person when it comes to water fluoridation. So right out of the box, you're probably going to be able to help people with their question about what do I do? But continue to learn about all of the various exceptions and the what ifs and how about this and how about that, because sooner or later you're going to get all of those questions. And it's really wonderful for your campaign if you're able to provide some true, intelligent information. Not only does it help that person right then and there, who is a potential ally and advocate, but it also gives you that credibility that is so priceless in this fight against fluoridation. We have a whole chapter about it coming up, about how to win the credibility war. That's one of our largest challenges, is that we're the ones who are going against agencies and trusted institutions that promote fluoridation. And here we're saying in the opposite. So we, from the get-go, are starting from behind in terms of the credibility war. So if you can talk very intelligently about water filtration, that's going to make a huge difference in somebody's attitude toward your campaign, attitude toward you as a person, and whether they should follow you, believe you, sign up for the thing, do whatever you ask them to do as part of your campaign. That might be the thing that turns somebody from a curious onlooker to someone who has a vested interest in ending fluoridation in their town. So let's keep learning together. Let's keep learning together right now. So who else? What are your solutions? What are your personal solutions for you and your family? And what do you do when people ask you? Colin talked about the resource on the Fluoride Action Network's website, from Mercola, that fantastic source of information. Are there some people here on this call who aren't filtering their water? Are you drinking fluoridated water?
I wanted to say one more thing, how important it is, because the NRC study showed that if you live in a fluoridated city and you do drink the water, 65 or 70% of all the fluoride in your blood comes just from the water. People always tell me, well, why do I worry about 0.7 parts per million in drinking water when my toothpaste is 1,500? Even people that are against fluoride, they don't care about what's in the water because it's only 0.7. But you got to realize the toothpaste you spit out. And the drinking water and cooking water, you consume that all day long. So again, 65 or 70% of your blood fluoride is just from the water, maybe only 10% from toothpaste. So it's important.
I see, yeah, and then food, that's another source. So thank you for that. Yeah, it accumulates in your body. Let's see, who wants to tell us about their solution? Anybody?
My name's Marie.
Hi,
And
Marie.
so I started buying water for a while in the gallon jugs, but that's expensive and you end up with a ton of jugs. So I finally went to that machine like you're talking about, the refill machine, reverse osmosis at the Walmart. It's a pain in the butt, but you know, for 39 cents a gallon, it works. And so, you know, I like what you keep saying is don't get overwhelmed. Just, you know, take it step by step because it can get overwhelming. So, all right, so I've got that for my drinking water and for my pets. But, you know, we don't have the water pressure for an RO system under the house and just different things. But as far as sharing with other people, I try to open the conversation when I can, like at a restaurant, when they say, do you want water? And I say, no, I don't want any fluoride, and their eyes glaze over. So, you know, whenever I can open a conversation, I do. One thing I've done is I like to do graphic design and layout. So I like to design little flyers with, you know, pictures and bullet points, and so that when somebody expresses an interest, rather than me go into some long dissertation or try to explain things, to have something that I can share with them on a particular topic about thyroid or babies or pets, or something that I hope will educate them and engage them without being too overwhelming. And so one of my goals or hopes is this pregnancy center has an annual baby shower, and they have free booths for vendors. You can't sell anything, but they said, oh, you know, doctors' offices and different things. And I said, well, I'd like to set up a table for fluoride-free alternatives. Oh, she said, I have to check with the board on that. And I haven't heard back, but what I was hoping to do was just share some, you know, not preach anything, just say, you know, this is what it is, and here's some alternatives, and perhaps get some free samples. You know, she was all about free samples and gifts. And oh yeah, so you know, Martinelli's sparkling cider, they specifically use non-fluoridated water. And I found in the Dollar Tree, they've got little individual size Martinellis. And I thought, I haven't contacted them yet, but if I could get some Martinelli's small size, some Colgate toothpaste non-fluoridated samples, and get some things. So I'd kind of like to pursue that and maybe get some things together to show this pregnancy center, because they're all about education and health and wellness. So I want to try to make some inroads there.
Fantastic. That's wonderful, Marie. I love the sound of that. Just provide the facts and let them make decisions for themselves. All right, thank you. Colin.
Just another fact, Starbucks worldwide use reverse osmosis filters for their water. But it's not to get the fluoride out, it's to say that their coffee tastes the same all around the world. But it's an interesting fact.
Yeah, I've heard that. Did you confirm that with corporate, or did you test the water yourself, or how do we know this?
I did both.
I think, yeah, I think it has been confirmed on their website.
On the website.
Yeah, I tested the water at Starbucks, and sure enough, I wrote to the headquarters in Seattle, and they said, yeah, they all of their coffee is made with RO water. And so they were the marketing people were all excited when I told them that how happy we all were that it takes a fluoride contaminant out of the water, so everybody can go to Starbucks without worrying about fluoride. And
Yes.
he was all enthused about spreading that around all the Starbucks to let people know and advertise it, but it kind of died. It's typical with fluoride. No, nobody wants to talk about the F word in any of these cities where the government wants the water to be fluoridated. So the marketing department in Starbucks is all excited and thrilled to get the advertising going, but then it died.
Then they got tapped on the shoulder and said, "Him."
But at least I have friends who were so delighted they thought they couldn't go to Starbucks anymore if they wanted to avoid fluoride. But I had to tell them, no, it's fine.
Yes.
Well, maybe we could do their advertising for them.
Yes.
That's
Yeah,
one
I
thing
do.
I've worked out. We have a great senator over here who knows all about medical mandates and medical forced medical situations which violate bodily autonomy. So he knows all about that, but he won't have anything to do with touching fluoridation. So I just put his photo up there. It says, this senator knows how to stop fluoridation. It's slightly misleading, but he hasn't sued me yet. So we could help Starbucks advertise the fact that they don't like fluoride, even though they don't specifically take it out for the fluoride. We could make up slightly misleading information and with a few facts thrown in.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, if you can leverage Starbucks brand name and use that as a talking point for sure. Quite a few years back now, maybe 5 years ago, 6 years ago, we here in San Francisco were going to various cafes and asking them to filter their water and letting them know that Starbucks did that. And if they would do that, bars and restaurants and cafes, we would put a decal on their window that said fluoride-free water served here. And we got a few cafes to do that. It was not easy I mean, not that, I don't know what I'm comparing it to, because it's not like I ever tried that before. But the funniest part was that when I would go into a business to talk about their water with my fluoride detector device, they would think that I was there to sell them filtration, that I was a water filtration salesperson, and this was just my angle. And they're always surprised to find out that no, there's no sale. I'm not trying to sell you anything. But it is very funny because if you learn enough about water filtration, you kind of become like an expert, and you might ask yourself, maybe that is the profession I need to be in. It's very funny, the crossovers. But yeah, when you show up and you're just a concerned resident trying to help out the community, it's kind of mind-blowing for people because they didn't know that people like that existed. You mean you're just really here to help clean the water and for people's health, and that's why I'm here.
They were with Clearly Filtered when they first sent me the free filter. They also gave me access to their affiliate program, and anything got sold through the code they gave me, I got 25% commission.
Mm-hmm.
And when I become associated with Fluoride Free Australia Inc., I said, well, maybe I should drop that because it would appear I'm making money out of it if it ever got found out. And so anyway, it is another way to raise funds. If some of these other filter companies also give affiliations, I believe.
Yeah, I don't see any reason why your fluoride-free campaign can't be sponsored by a water filtration company. There's nothing unethical about that. As long as you're transparent about it, there's no reason not to do it. I think we should all explore that. I think we should all explore having filtration companies, or there's this one person we interviewed at the International Fluoride-Free Teleconference, the original one, where the chapter for the book came from. He's a water treatment specialist, and that's his profession. And he sells water treatment to small individuals, whole house filters, companies, restaurants. So he's very knowledgeable about all the various alternatives. And he makes a good living consulting people about water. He doesn't manufacture water filtration devices. He just knows all of them, and he goes in and helps people pick the right one for them that's most cost effective and most efficient and all those good things. So that's something that a fluoride-free campaigner could be, that level of expert, and there's no reason not to, or to combine our efforts with those people, as long as we're transparent about it, as I said. So, but let me ask, maybe you guys know, Richard, perhaps, what's the best fluoride detector? What's the best device? Because I heard there's one that you can just stick it under the water just straight away and get your reading without using the little pills and all the things that mine has.
I don't know about that one. I always used a Lamont Industries meter, and you had to add the potassium nitrate tablet because you have to get rid of all the gases. It makes the water even more polar than what it already is. And the gas, like oxygen and nitrogen, are non-polar. So they tend to bubble out of the water, and it gets that out of the way because the electrode would be interfered with by those gases. And the ionic strength of the medium has to be right and controlled for that way. But if there's a different type, then I'm not aware of it. But I always use the Lamont one. But I'm sure there's several good ones out there if you go online and look. But they got kind of pricey. I did so much measuring. I ran through 3 of those, and they all got worn out. And I don't have one right now. I stopped, but I've checked everything that I wanted to check. Coca-Cola, all these things that people are tending to ask me about. I pretty much have covered. So I don't really need one now.
Right. Yes. I've often asked too, if I wanted to measure the fluoride content in a beverage or a soup that's not just plain water, what do we do? Because I stopped going. I love Vietnamese pho, the traditional Vietnamese soup, but I heard that they're very proud of the fact that they keep their broth going. They don't start new with new water every day. They'll add ingredients, stuff to it, and keep it brewing, so to speak, day after day, after week, month after month, and they just keep adding water as it evaporates off. But all know what that means is that logically that fluoride is being concentrated in that soup in extraordinary quantities. So I've often wondered if I could measure the pho and show the owner what they're doing to people. Might make a big difference. But how do you even begin to measure the fluoride when it's not water, like you said, Coca-Cola or a broth? Do you have to filter it first and then put this? I know this is just a personal curiosity I have. I don't know. You can indulge me for a minute. Maybe
Well, like Coca-Cola was difficult because I kept getting readings of no fluoride, but I knew from the literature that there was fluoride in the phosphate syrup that they use. But I kept getting a reading of 0 until I figured out, well, wait a minute, it's because the pH is like 5 for the Coke, and if you let it sit out and let the carbon dioxide evaporate, and so that it's a flat Coke now, and then you check it, the fluoride's in there because the acid will interfere with the ability of the electrode to pick it up. So there is some fluoride in Coke, not a lot, but every liquid can have its own little quirk to it.
Right.
So, yeah.
It'd be great if we could just be like handy dandy, device, be like every time, wherever you are, Johnny on the spot, testing. Oh, it's part 7, 1.0. And you just, bam. That would be amazing if we had that. We're not quite there yet. Yes. All right. Anyone else want to share your personal solutions and or how you talk to people who ask you when you're campaigning, what do I do? Yes, I'd love Kevin.
Greetings, everybody. I'm in New Zealand. With our nationally, with our Prime Minister standing down, a lot of the sheeple are becoming aware of the lies that we've been told, and are starting to question things. So our national fluoride-free campaign is ramping up a little bit to make people aware of that, with particular reference to meeting with MPs and people that are willing to stand in our election, which will be later in the year. So that's sort of where we stand there. I'm an administrator. We've got about 7 or 8 regions in New Zealand, and I'm administrator of the Facebook Fluoride-Free Hawke's Bay page. So, trying to get the word out is what we're doing there. I personally have not got a water filter. We campaigned in Hawke's Bay, and we got the council to install a borehole that was sucking water from the aquifer, and they have got filters there, and that is fluoride free and chlorine free water. And that's what they say. We need to regularly test that. I'm contradicting myself. We're trying to be aware of lies that the government are telling you, and then I tell you that the government say it's fluoride free. So yes, that's a good point, Ray, that I considered at the meeting. We need to check that they're actually telling the truth. But I collect 20 to 30 liters. What are we? 4 to 6 gallons of water a week from there. I then use a terahertz frequency wand, which changes that water from being polymeric to linear, which makes it more available to the body, because the body likes having 7.6 megahertz linear water to it, which is basically what the body is, as we know, 70-80%, whatever the percent of water in the body is. So that's my water non-filtration, but water awareness and purification process that I adopt for myself.
Fascinating. Wow, what great knowledge. Wonderful. Okay, and you also introduced us to your campaign. So unless anybody else wants to talk about reducing exposure to fluoridation chemicals in your day-to-day life, and or what it's like to help others while you're on the campaign trail, you want to go for it, Gilles?
Yes, you just have to move to Quebec, because it's hard to find a city that's fluoridated now. We just have 1% population. So move to Quebec and it'll be much better.
That's the solution, right? Forget about all those complicated water filters.
But for me and my 2, I could say, co-author of Fluoridation Autopsy of a Scientific Error, we all on a well, so we don't have fluoridated water. We're very sorry for that too.
Yes. What a dream. Okay. Well, anyone else have anything they want to talk about as far as water filtration? Anyone using it? Countertop distillation? Anyone using aluminum? Anyone else have any creative solutions? Yeah, there's a place that people go to. It's it'd probably be like a 45-minute drive from here. Apparently there's a natural spring to load up with. I've often thought about doing that for myself, but also, maybe have a water share, where a group of people somehow agree. Somebody goes at least there's one person going at least every day or something, so we can, as a group of people, always have a constant supply. There's in the book I quoted Dr. Kennedy. he says, you can't make good water, you can only buy it. So with the exception of going to some natural spring, you really have two options. You can buy it, the spring waters in plastic or in sometimes glass, where you get it from some source. As has been pointed out already today, you want to check the source. I know Crystal Geyser is very big here in California. They have two main sources. One of them has higher fluoride than the other, for sure. So, but at least on their website, they indicate, depending on which source what's the fluoride content depending on the source. So that's how I know. But anyway, you can buy it in a bottle in glass from the source, provided to you by some company, or you can quote unquote make your water by filtering it in a variety of ways. And when you're filtering your water, it's not natural, so to speak. So it causes other problems. So I told you I use reverse osmosis at home, but I do supplement it with natural spring water. So from jars and jugs when I'm out and about, so that I don't only drink reverse osmosis all the time. Lauren, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So I currently am buying my water. For years, I just used the black Berkey filters until I became more aware of the fluoride situation and the fact that the filters don't filter out fluoride. So I've been buying my water, but that doesn't take care of the water at work. So I still need to figure something out for that. I either need to take my water along or try to get a better filter at work.
Mm-hmm.
Does anyone, I have a question. Since I'm renting where I live right now, I've decided not to put a reverse osmosis in, but I did buy a property. I know there's some reverse osmosis. I think it's like maybe a 7 or 8 stage where they bring the water back up to a certain alkalinity. The reverse osmosis systems that you can, at Walmart or whatever, the places where I'm buying my water, does anybody know if those are, how many stages they are, or does the water end up being acidic? Does anybody have any knowledge on that?
I'm with David Kennedy. There really is no 100% dependable way of filtering your water and getting good water. I recently moved to a community that does not fluoridate. However, they have PFOAs in their water, they have atrazine in their water, and they have the chemical that Erin Brockovich became famous for in the water. So I'm still buying my bottled water, but they also have so much chlorine in the water that I'm looking at getting a whole house filter that supposedly will take out the particulate, will take out the chlorine, and take out, the atrazine as well. Whether or not I will be comfortable drinking it after that, whether I want to do some sort of reverse osmosis or ion exchange, I just don't know. It'll get to the point where I'll feel more comfortable washing my hands and washing my dishes in it, I think, and growing my plants in it. But to my mind, the only thing we can do really is political activism. But in the meantime, we do have to do what we can do to protect ourselves. And I'm not sure. I've been looking at what the best approach is to try to get all the other stuff out of the water that has polluted the water besides fluoride. Just getting fluoride out isn't enough.
Yes, thank you, Karen. You remind me that when you're out there talking to folks about reducing their exposure to fluoride, then the topic of all the other stuff that's in the water comes up too. And once again, if you can say, for example, here in my city, it's not chlorine that they use, it's chloramine that they use as a disinfectant. That's something I can say that lends some credibility. If I talk about some of the other contaminants that we're challenged with, that can help with my credibility. So thanks for reminding me of that. You kind of it's a lot to learn. And again, don't get overwhelmed, one thing at a time. But you can see that any kind of information you can give to people about their water gets them speaking honestly and frankly about it. That's as I was saying at the beginning of this teleconference, some of the biggest breakthroughs you can have with people is just have them talking about the water for the first time. So often it's like the thing that people assume is okay. It's enough. San Francisco, the Public Utilities Commission probably spends more money on marketing than they do on actual treatment of the water, so that everyone believes that the water's great and they can go to sleep and don't have to think about it, don't have to worry about it. So again, that's the big challenge when I come to them and tell them the San Francisco tap water, which has such a great reputation, has a neurotoxin in it and we need to get it out. There's a bit of cognitive dissonance that I confront pretty much routinely with that. So if you're getting people talking about the water at all, it's a really good thing. And now,
I don't know if it was mentioned before, the EWG has a nice little site there where you can go and it can say, okay, your zip code, they say the water passes the EPA standards, but you have these things in it to such an extent that we, the Environmental Working Group, do not think it's really safe. And they don't have fluoride on there, which is something that I was thinking I need to start campaigning to try to get the EWG to put fluoride on is one of the things that they should be concerned about. But I think that's a good place to start conversations with people. Say, forget what the water people tell you or what the EPA tells you. Let's look at the Environmental Working Group, what they tell you about their water. They'll tell you a lot more interesting stuff.
That's right. That's right. The Environmental Working Group has that great resource. I also found on the Berkey Filters website, they have it by zip code too. Maybe they're piggybacking off of the Environmental Working Group because it's a major database that they have with all of the water quality issues. When they first came out with it, Karen, I did contact them about the fluoride, and they said they don't think of it the same way as a contaminant because it's voluntarily introduced. Which is, fluoride is always the oddball. And so even with the Environmental Working Group, but you're right, we can use that as a resource. But I wanted to say to Lauren about renting. I rent my apartment, and the only thing that you need to do under sink that is permanent, and it's not totally permanent, is you need to drill a little hole into the pipes that go out. Because the way reverse osmosis works, there's a fair amount of wastewater. It doesn't make it through the filter because the filter is so fine, so small that some of the water gets rejected and it has to have a place to go out. So you drill a little hole in that, put a little couple around it, stick a pipe, a little plastic from the filtration system into that thing, and that's it. So when you move out, if that's what you're thinking, I don't want to do any permanent. When you move out, you could replace that whole section of pipe, or you can just cap off the thing, and it's fine the way it is. I didn't ask my landlord. I didn't talk to my landlord about it. I just did it. And you have to have a 4-gallon container, which is the reservoir, right? That comes with reverse osmosis. Always has a reservoir because of the slowness of the filtration as well. If you want to have ready water, you need to have a reservoir, and the one I got is 4 gallons and it fits under my sink just fine. All right, then. So let's now move our conversations to supporting each other in our local campaign. So if you'd like to please, raise your hand again, give us the name of your campaign, and then let's talk in terms of objectives, assets, and behaviors. So we want to be very concrete about what you're up to. So at any point in time, whether you're just getting started or your campaign has been around for a while, you always have some objective in mind in front of you, whether in the beginning it's just getting up a website or getting an email list going. That's exactly where you are. And then you want to talk about the assets that you're accumulating in order to achieve those objectives, and then the activities or the behaviors that you personally or people on your team are exhibiting in order to achieve those objectives. And then that helps us understand really quickly where you are in your campaign. So it's not abstract. There's a time and place, as you'll see in a later chapter when we get to it, for visualizing and creating the future of your campaign through your imagination. But for right now, right here, the best way that we can support each other in in the moment, like where you're at today, is if we can quickly understand your campaign where it's at today. And again, those three things are: what's our objective right now that we're actively pursuing? What are the assets we need or that we already have that we're deploying? And what are the behaviors or activities related to that objective that we are doing? And then very quickly, the rest of us can see if there's a gap. There's a gap in your assets or a gap in your behaviors, and we can see, oh, well, that's what's missing, and this is what you need, or this is how we can, maybe somebody here can provide you with the thing that's missing. You don't know, but it's a good practice to get into, even if we here personally can't fulfill that thing that you're missing in terms of your assets or behaviors. It's a good practice to get into, because when you're out talking to people who are interested in joining your campaign, who knows what resources they have, who knows what skills and talents they have. But if you can very quickly give them the overview of your campaign by naming the objectives, the assets and behaviors, then they will naturally see the gap and volunteer to fulfill that gap. Let's say you need $100, to pay for an email service, whatever. They say, well, I've actually, here's 50, and I'll get the other 50 for you, or what have you. They'll see right away that there is a need, and because of their interest in any water fluoridation, they will seek ways to help you fill those gaps.
These are being recorded. Where can we access recordings that I can pass on to our group in New Zealand?
Absolutely. So the first one from last month is available on our YouTube channel, Fluoride-Free Campaigns on YouTube. And then this one and all the rest and the first one are going to be part of the International Fluoride-Free Teleconference Library, which includes all those 100+ hours of audio testimony that the Fluoride Campaigners book that I wrote was based on. So, and then I'm going to be continuously adding more resources as well. For example, I've just recorded an interview with Brenda Saudermeyer, a wonderful campaigner she lives in Wisconsin, I believe. Anyway, she and I did a whole dissertation on video about public comment and how to do that well. So, various kinds of campaigners toolkit is really what it's becoming. So I'll send that out in the follow-up email. You'll get that, and you can share it all you like, and I'd really appreciate it, because it's really solid information. And let's be honest, we're all amateurs, right? Most of us. I happen to be a campaign consultant today. I retooled my career in the last few years to run local electoral campaigns. I can tell you it's not rocket science, but there's a variety of things to understand in terms of fundraising and communications and websites and volunteer coordination and all the fundamentals of a campaign. But we can learn, and the best way is on the job. I can tell you that's the best way to learn.
No, thanks, Clint.
You're the best, Kevin. Thanks for coming. See you next time. Hello, Liz.
Thank you so much. Well, I'm just excited to have this opportunity to be with like-minded, purposefully doing something people, rather than people who don't even understand we have a problem, because what we're seeing is really an attack on people in multiple different ways. Medically, we've just seen with the COVID vaccines, and so I was glad to hear somebody bring up that concern, because that was our New Zealand young man that just left. But we have been working with teams of people that are working as a part of a legislature that we have compiled as a new legislature, because our California legislature is completely corrupted, and we have been putting together resolutions which are written precursors to laws, and we document all of the different reasons, the reasons why. And so you then document the health reasons that the fluoride causes, and then you say, because of these things, then we recommend this, this, and this, and this. So I'm just excited to know that we have got this Zoom meeting going on. We've got a brotherhood of people that are focused in on this, because we are writing one right now on fluoride poisoning. So see, it's a poison. It's not a treatment, it's a poison. And so we need to start rewording our terminology, don't bite off the terminology that we've been handed that glosses over the dangers, but start to actually call it the things. And I feel like an activist, and I'm not comfortable with that. In a lot of ways I wasn't, but now I'm starting to learn you have to shock people. It's kind of like a shock factor to make them listen to you. And then you say, well, why would you call it a poison? Well, I call it a poison because here's the detrimental effects it has on your body. And we need to start recognizing this is being done to us. And here's the diseases that we see. And that's a direct indication that they are effectively using it as a weapon against us. And so, although I don't like COVID-19 and what happened there, believe me, what I do like about it is that it has jerked people's awareness into what is going on, because it's really becoming very recognizable that it was a weaponized worldwide event. And so I'm saying all of this to say, we're putting together a resolution. It will be documenting what the health effects are, or detriments are, and then putting together recommendations of what we should be implementing in contrast. And so I find that that would be something that would be beneficial to everyone, because the implementation is going to your government and saying, this needs to stop. You can do it locally, then statewide, province-wide, and then going all the way up to the national level to get these harms stopped. And it's not just fluoride. And I mean, all of the medications that we have a delta here. If I happen to be on well, but for the people who get their water supply, they come out of the delta, and that's draining all the way down through the state. Everybody's dumping back their sewage, treated sewage, back into the water. And I started as an environmental biologist back in 1978. I came here from New York specifically to study the delta. And I started at that time saying, well, what is happening to the residuals in the urine and in the feces? What is happening to the blood pressure medicine, the heart medicine, the birth control medicines? What is happening? Are we monitoring any of that? They do not. They don't measure that at all. So we really do need to start to look at water in a bigger, the filtration process, yes, for fluoride, but also for these other contaminants. Is it effective against all of these contaminants? And I loved your idea of the sticker, the decal, because we can do something on a bigger scale we use whatever process, and I don't know if there is one that removes medical contaminants, but we could have something that would say not just fluoride, but these other things are being reverse osmosis out, and say we're contaminant free. It's time that people start becoming alerted to the danger, because they will not stop until we start pushing back, and we've got to push back hard. So that's my input.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you very much. So maybe some people here can help out with this this legislation you're talking about, because I don't know the details. Maybe somebody here does, but in Europe, for example, many of the countries in their very constitutions, it prohibits fluoridation of water. I believe it's something along the lines of the water systems in this country shall not be used to treat, as to introduce a treatment of the body of the drinker of the water. I mean, there's treating the water itself for sanitation, which is one whole topic area. But I believe maybe somebody can help me here. Is that usual? What is the language in those constitutions? It's not simply you can't put a toxin in, because that becomes a whole. I mean, even in California, we have a law that you're not allowed to put anything that's carcinogenic in anything. But obviously, fluoride again is the odd man out. But instead, they just simply say you can't use the water to medicate. I believe is something along. Does anyone know any better than I do?
At least in Canada, we have a law that says you cannot add a medication to the water, but you could add fluoride to the water, it's okay, as long if it's of a pharmaceutical grade. So that goes back to the legal classification of the chemical we're adding to the water. So as the Food and Drug have not classified the fluoride as a drug, and no one else have classified in any other classification except a water treatment chemical, and as it does not treat the water, so what's left? And the only legal classification left, at least in Canada, it's a toxic and hazardous substance. That's the only classification in which fluoride compounds are classified in. So as long they're adding those chemicals in the water without a legal classification, then you have to say that they're adding a toxic substance, which is a criminal offense. It's not only illegal, it's a criminal offense. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're going for in our action in Montreal in the next few weeks.
Well, United States is similar, but it is they do such a dance with the language. The Safe Drinking Water Act says that you can't add anything to the water for the purpose of treating people, and the Clean Water Act says you can't intentionally add any known contaminants to the water. But they have language saying that, you know, fluoride is kind of okay within these limits and these parameters. But the Safe Drinking Water Act also says that they can't require anything for be added to national waters. And so we think, oh, this is a state thing. But apparently all waters are considered national waters. So it's very, very murky, because the national law is supposed to have supremacy over the state law. So if the national law says you can't do something, you can't put the contaminants in, and you can't require it, then how can the Board of Health require that the cities put this in? Because then it's going against the national law. But as we all know, having lawsuits against these power structures, it's very difficult and very expensive. But there's certainly an argument to be made that it is violating both the letter and the spirit of the law when state authorities will say, we are going to fluoridate this water.
Yeah, just to say, the question is not if we are able to add fluoride to the water, it's what type of fluoride. So it have to be classified in a group of substance. And that's what we're going for. It's the legal classification of the chemical they're adding to the water. They cannot say it's a source of a nutrient if it's not prepared in sanitary condition and if it's not regulated by Health Canada in Canada. So if, as it's not regulated in Canada as a source of a nutrient, it have to be somewhere as a classification, and it cannot be a water treatment chemical because it does not treat the water. So there's only one legal classification, and that's what the only thing we have to prove in court, that it's a toxic and hazardous substance, and that's done. And it's maybe a question of 3 hours in the court, so it's not very expensive. And never elsewhere this have been tried, not even the States or New Zealand or Australia or whatsoever, not even in England. So that will be the first time this approach have been tried.
Finally, once and for all. Yeah, it's obvious in a way, right? To us sitting here, we're not confused by all the word games that they play and different categories that they use. But yeah, so Gilles is, if you're not familiar, everyone, with Gilles' campaign. Currently, it's this court objective. The objective is to get the court to recognize that fluoride is a toxic substance. It's not a pharmaceutical grade medication. It's not just an average contaminant, an ordinary contaminant. It like you said, it has the only category it can fit into is a toxic substance, and it needs to be regulated accordingly. To go ahead and give us a little bit about what's going on with your campaign, and maybe what do you need? Because you said to me earlier before we started that you were about to meet with a lawyer to talk about it in detail. The thing about the legal avenue typically is the expense. So just wondering, maybe do you need money? I mean,
we certainly will need money, but we're just at the step of the formal notice that we'll be sending to the town of Montreal, telling that the product they're adding to the water is not legally classified as anything else than a toxic substance, and they cannot support any other type because we have already a Supreme Court judgment saying it cannot be a water treatment chemical because the product they're adding is added after the water treatment, and it's added for another purpose, which is a purpose of treating the individual against a disease. And by that, it means it have to be regulated as a drug. But Health Canada does not regulate the fluoridation agent as drug or as a source of a nutrient or as a food or anything else. Health Canada says it's not our responsibility because water treatment is of provincial jurisdiction, and the province gives the right to the city to add the fluoride to the water because it's a water treatment chemical, but it cannot be legally classified by definition as a water treatment chemical. And by C, the only legal classification, and that's already ruled in 19 regulation or law in Canada, it's as a water toxic and hazardous substance. As there's no other legal classification than that, it have to be that, and there's no other choice. So that's what we're going to try to prove in court. So the lawyer says we might need $20,000 if it goes to court. So the city of Montreal, after the notice, might decide we don't go further and we stop fluoridating the two municipalities that we have, except adding the fluoride to the water on the city, it's on the island of Montreal. Those two cities are not part of Montreal, but Montreal supply the water to those two cities. Are responsible for the water treatment plant, and that's the only plant that fluoridate the water. So if not, then the provincial government might decide to support the court action or the defense of the court action, and then we'll need money. And so we figured that if we go there, we might need 20,000. And there's an environmental group, a foundation that is probably ready to supply half of the cost of the court action, but we don't know yet how much it will cost. So if you could help, we already have about $7,000 in the bank account for that action, and we might need 20,000 if we go to court. But as the foundation might supply half of the cost, so we might need just $3,000 more. So that's very little.
Fantastic. That's it. So that's a good example of describing your objective, what you're up to in terms of your behaviors, and the assets that you'll need to achieve your objective. Very good. And then, of course, as you see, it's natural to say, okay, where can I help? Okay, obviously, I'm not a lawyer, so I can't help with that part. Let's see. I don't live in Montreal.
We have the lawyer already.
Huh?
We have the lawyer that is even giving its time for us free. Oh. Not all, but a good part of it. So just to tell you that we have convinced them very deeply into that issue.
Fantastic. Wow. A lot of people would love to have that resource in their town. And then
I did too for a long period of time.
Mm-hmm.
Find the right person at the right time. Well, that's not always an easy task. And also getting all that information, that means you need to do a lot of freedom of information to getting information out. We have to look at all the laws and regulation. You have to look everywhere. So that's what we have done over the 20 last years.
Very good. So the lawyer is doing his bit, but he's not familiar with the topic as much as you
exactly.
are. And
we have to educate him. So there was a 200 and a few page just on the legal aspect that I have given to him.
Okay, good. So yeah, I want to remind you all about this this element called dynamic strategizing, which comes in, it's in the book under turning passion into action. And this is something that campaigners use constantly. Think during your campaign, when things are dynamic, that means that they're changing, oftentimes because of your activism, because of your campaigning. You can find this graph in the book itself, but when we're together and when you're out in the field, my intention is to have you all practicing speaking to the outcomes, assets, and behaviors, just like Gilles did. So right away, you can quickly understand exactly where the campaign is and where the gap is. In this case, with Gilles, it's the money is the big gap, and that and he even specified how much it's going to cost and where they're at. So there's a gap of $13,000. So anybody who's on your team, so to speak, or wants to support your campaign, they can see right away, oh, an extra $1,000 would help, wouldn't it? And you should be prepared to ask for it, but this is a way of describing your situation such that it's obvious what you need, and they can pursue their natural inclination to want to help by seeing, just like you're seeing, what the gap is and then filling it. All right.
People could go on the site of Fluoride-Free Canada, and they have all the information if you want to contribute to that. And even the $50 is helpful.
Okay, great, wonderful. Did you hear that, everyone? To have this finally once and for all tested in a court, this question, we all know that they keep switching the categories based on their convenience to keep water full of fluoride, but it's going to take a court to force them to act according to the law.
If it's win in Canada, it might have impacts everywhere around the world. Exactly,
Absolutely.
because that's the same legal classification everywhere.
Absolutely, same wordplay, the same games they play happen everywhere. So go ahead, Lauren.
I've been talking to a lawyer about my campaign here. I don't know, those of you that are on Telegram, I posted the bulletin that I have roughly put together to mail out here in my city. And I talked to the lawyer, and he gave me a couple potential liability issues on the second portion where I'm calling people to or bringing up the need for local public health accountability and using the matter of fluoride. You know, since I did bring this to the attention of local officials over a year ago, as far as I know, they haven't done anything beneficial along those lines. So in my mind, that's just, I guess, evidence of untrustworthiness. So I'm wanting to use that as, you know, an argument for the need for a local public health accountability network. So he pointed out some possible liability issues, you know, mentioning names and so on. I have to make sure that everything that I say is squeaky clean, accurate, or they could try a defamation lawsuit potentially. But what I really need right now is someone with a lot of knowledge of the subject to help make sure that all of my statements are accurate and backed up with proper studies. I'm just taking information off of the Fluoride Action Network website, and I'm wanting to make sure that it's all connected to studies and so on.
Let's see, Lauren, even before we go there, there's just one element. I definitely got the asset. This is the asset, right? A very valuable asset in your campaign can be an accurate flyer that communicates facts, in this case, risks of drinking fluoridated water. You don't want to risk defamation, and you want the information to be accurate if you're going to be putting this out there. And then the behavior is duplicating this, replicating it, and getting it out to people in your community, presumably.
Yes. The objective is to get the information into everybody's hands, each resident, and from those 1,000 homes, there'll be enough people that will respond back and say, I'd like to help. And then we send it out to the next 5,000 homes or whatever. And then we take the feedback that we get from that and finish the job, send it out to the rest of the city. That's kind of my step-by-step process. But the end objective is to get it into the hands of everyone in the city. You know, maybe in a month from now, I'll be looking more at the aspect of financing everything or financing the first step. But right now, I'm focusing my attention on making sure that the document itself is squeaky clean. Because if you notice on the second portion of that document, I'm naming, and I'm considering possibly taking that off, but I'm naming the public officials that aren't doing anything with, you know, with what I would consider to be very important information. I think the most important thing to me is getting the truth into the hands of the people, because there's a lot of pregnant women in this city that don't know that they could be, hurting their developing children. So to me, that's number one. People can then take steps to protect themselves.
But one tip about the way you're writing this stuff, you like you say, you want to avoid a definition issue. So what you want to do is not too much cite heavily that the Fluoride Action Network, because a lot of people regard FAN as a biased organization, and you could run into trouble if you only relied on that. So you can downplay that and only reference the material that the Fluoride Action Network actually references. In other words, the science that it came from, reference that directly rather than admitting that you got it from FAN. That'll be one big step to help you out of that mess.
I put together a document with close to 200 references since 2015, full references, URLs. You don't mention FAN at all. I have my thumbnail annotated bibliography citation there as well. So I agree. My first item, I didn't use FAN, and I just did all my original research, even though I was immediately accused of copying from FAN, and I wasn't. So I would advise you to, go look at the actual science. So I've sent that to you. So you can use that to see if you can get your citations in order without referencing FAN.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, everyone, thank you very much for being here. This has been amazing. Look forward to our next month when we will be talking about another aspect of successful campaigning. We're going to map your jurisdiction. Okay. In every town or county or region, fluoride is in the water because it was put in the water because of some politics, whether the folks in your town voted for it or the city council put it in place. Somehow or other it got put into place, and every situation is a little different. Like in California, we have a state mandate, and in San Francisco, it was actually a ballot measure by voters back in the 50s. So you need to know how it got in there, and then understand what it's going to take to get it out. Politically speaking, for example, it is a matter of health policy in San Francisco. You need to understand the laws that apply to your jurisdiction, first and foremost. If you don't understand that, you're always going to be having a hard time with the campaign. So everybody needs to do the homework to find out how it got in there and what are the legal avenues to getting it out through politics. What are the political avenues? And then, when we get to April, you'll actually choose the pathway to get it out. So the first thing to do is analyze your situation, the history and the politics of fluoridation in your region, in your jurisdiction. And then the following month, you choose which pathway is most effective. All right. So again, thanks everyone for being here. Make sure to share on social media when you see posts or if you see an email. The email itself has, at the bottom of the email, it has a link to see it as a web page. So you can use that link and directly share it to your social media. Again, look forward to seeing you all again back here the second Saturday or Sunday if you're down under where it's summertime. Get over there on Telegram too. And then that way you can be in communication and start talking with folks there.
Thank you for facilitating this. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Clint.
It's my pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.